Faleminderit gjithëve që keni ardhur. Ligjërata e ardhshme është nga Rok Oman, I cili është themeluesi I ofisit Office Architects me bazë në Ljubljana, së bashku me Spelën. Kam folur pak më shumë edhe për veten e tij, po sa për kurreshit, domethënë është ligjërues tash për 5 vjet në Harvard, po ka ligjëruar edhe në për institucione tjera të famshme. Rok, please.
Okay, thank you very much. First for invitation, for all the guests and students and colleagues and so on. So I will start to bore you with some history. I hope I will not that Polona did something before me, but anyway I will do some lesson just to mark my country, if you don't know it. So it's this chicken-shaped small country, very similar, let's say 2 million like Kosovo. Ljubljana has similar, like 350 like Pristina. So it's very easy even to cross it in 1.5 diagonals. Even from Ljubljana, you can reach Mediterranean coast and Alpine part. Okay, except your former Kosovo Prime Minister, so I'm sorry for that. So we have both mountains and the seaside. This is our highest peak called Triglav. In translation means three heads. And this is the capital, Ljubljana, pretty much old middle-aged city which started below the hill and typically with middle-aged castle. So just some touristic postcard to imagine if you didn't visit it yet, you have to visit from now. So this is a view towards the south, and you can see here the view towards the north where the Alps and some pretty much nightlife. But I will just mention one guy, architect, who is one of the, let's say, few who was also noted on the banknotes next to, for instance, Alto and Le Corbusier. So his surname is Plečnik. If you don't know him, I would suggest that you search a bit about his work. And what is very special, because I mentioned him, because he was contemporary of both, also especially Le Corbusier, but he kept his complete, let's say, unique style, which he produced, or you could say that he filled his, let's say, imaginary image with historic from antiques and so on. So nevertheless, in the golden era of modernism, this, I would say, nevertheless, that it was very brave act of his work. So we can see, for instance, one church with very limited budget and most well-known, let's say, National University Library. As you can see, very interesting texture on the facade. Also, for instance, the pavement, say that he picked the stones all around construction site and incorporated into the pavement. And the other thing is that he designed everything from external to the last detail of each house, each interior. So as you can see here, the main library, the main reading hall, see the chandelier, everything was designed by him till the last knob. So I will just a bit of history. So we got independent in '91. So after this, especially young generation of architects, we had more or less a luck that we could join to enter. Pretty much there were a lot of competitions. So we had some luck to enter and to start together with some older architects. So also when the new country is established, it needs all the infrastructure, all the administration and institution which are important to lead the country. So first, which I will show, and I will show also the next project in relation to the new and old context. So first competition, I think it was in 98. It was for a city museum of Ljubljana, so it was extension, and I will mention it first also because it's just in vicinity of Plečnik. Where's my stick? Okay. So this is the National Library, and this is just vicinity the Auersperg Palace, which is of course protected from the outside, but we had some opportunity and also to put all the additional program and the extension in the behind on the yard. So you can see also during the historic it was rebuilt and reconstructed several times. So you can see the closed walls. I think there was sanitary vault on addition on the back. So we had all the opportunity to make the extension on the backyard. And also archaeologists expected a lot of ruins to be found, which also it became very true. So the basic question which we had to deal with is how to connect and how to involve a modern museum which was placed into the old palace with all the new infrastructural elements like air conditioning, lighting, ventilation, and all the safety requirements. So we basically did a way of a visitor around the museum. Thanks. And you can see this, I think this working model shows the way of the visitor and the suspended ceiling where all the equipment which I was mentioning before are hidden. And then the stroke and the way and the ring, it's going around and becomes a new extension, which you can see here. So all inside from the basement, then they found a lot of ruins, which was expected. So if you go from the basement, these are prehistoric era, and then what is very special element here was founding of the Roman road, and then at the next level is the Middle Age pavement, which was all incorporated into the design. So also this way of the visitor also went all the way during the design process well into the mind, because the way also connects all the levels. What is very important for archaeologists is that all the historical levels and the heights are kept. And the other thing is that here in all the excavation, no stone was moved or removed. So it was kind of very, let's say, challenging also for construction and also for statical reasons. So you can see now slowly we are going up for the ramp, then you can step. They also like the idea that it's not just to see, but that you can also feel and step on the pavement. So you can step at all the historic levels. You can see that also on the Middle Age pavement we positioned the City Museum Cafe. And you can see the stones were also incorporated into the pavement, and then you also feel the different, before you get to the first level, you can feel the different perspectives on the by yards from the both sides, and you can see the walls now are opened, and some imaginary which you think you will never finish. It took around 6 years to finish all the construction plus excavation. So this is the view back from the first, let's say, main courtyard towards the basement, and the view from the neighbor courtyard towards the museum courtyard. So the second extension, which is not very obvious, or common, is the extension of the stadium, a football stadium, which was the other competition we did, and it was also 98. So here I can maybe thank Hrvoje, he was in the jury, so without you maybe this stadium would not be there, so no corruption, we didn't know at that time at all. So what is very interesting to this project is that it's positioned in completely in the city center of the city, the second biggest city called Maribor, on the, let's say, northeast bordering to the Austria. So as you can see, the existing tribune, which existed from all the way from 60s with beautiful concrete arch, was already there. So the competition asked for extra 13,000 seats around the wall. So basically this first sketch also became a physically design of the stadium. So we started with very pragmatic points, so that we positioned maximum points of seats in the middle of both sides of the stadium, and the corners are left without. So the next step was that we positioned all the additional program on the base. So with natural architectural elements, we already established a security zone, which I think you know football maybe better than me, that you have all these security zones that you have to check, so you don't need additional fences. So nevertheless, we didn't even expect that this so-called balcony will also become a foyer of the stadium in between both parts of the match. So you can see that they all got together here and talk about politics and I don't know what. So the second things inside, maybe I will just quickly mention, it's the double transparent roof. Because of this, our stadium needed really minimum additional lighting, because we kept, maybe you can see here just one point, we kept the existing columns with the lighting. So where, especially the nights, already on the daytime, you got this diffuser light, but also during the night, during the match, and in between, you don't need additional lights, because you get lights through the diffused light from the existing lighting columns. So the first extension, which I will show, it's also not so common, it's extension of the villa, which is positioned on alpine part by the lake Bled. This is, I think, our only island, not in the seaside. And the extra request from the client, who held really a small competition, was to gain next to the house, which had around 400 square meters. He wanted to have around 700 square meters of new space, and from all the space of the living, he wanted to have the view on this lake and the island. So nevertheless, also that was existing villa under strict, not just environmental, but also heritage protection. As you can see on this, the existing position, the house was in very bad condition. So we decided, maybe with difference with other offices he invited, that we placed extension of all the additional square meter under the villa, because we took in extension in consideration the slope, which went down for around 3 meters, and also went quite well also with the heritage, because more or less now in this year, maybe this was the first year, but now it's all green, so you cannot even spot the new addition. So this is the, let's call it a pillow, which has also, let's say, the entering yard, with all the services, you can reach the main element of the, let's say, pillow from two sides, and also we displaced the entrance from the back, so from the side, so we disconnected this pillow, and that in order that you see through all the house and see the lake. So you can, this is the entrance, and very simple distribution of space. So this is the pillow, the living space. Then you have a children's floor, left and right on the old villa, plus they can take all this extra roof as a terrace, plus parents' floor. And in between, in the middle, there is a void which connects not just visually but also functionally the old and the new part of the villa. So I don't know, all architects in practice, they know that private projects are quite essential, very really interesting to, you have to talk, you have to, let's say, enlighten the client. So when we started to talk about the staircase, which we said that it could be the main, let's say, the core of the house, in between connecting both, so they brought me this image of, I don't know if you watched this Dynasty US, it was like really long movies. And slowly by slowly we get to the, let's say, some spiraling staircase which is connecting, and also visual element which you can see and be seen from all the parts of the room. You can see the living, and you can see the children's floor, and then upstairs the parents. So also the different levels of the terrain, we kind of stepped, elevated towards the living room, and in between both the first floor and the ground floor. So all the interior is cladded in wood, and the main elevation from the garden towards the entrance, so you can see the stroke and the vertical connection which you entering to this staircase. Okay, so the next extension, it's also unique because it's a small town Fairweather Chapel. So it's a kind of extension of existing graveyard, which is also kind of really small held competition. So you can see existing graveyard. So chapel should have several functions: to hold a memorial and to have some square in between, and also connect the both roads and connection to the graveyard. Plus we had to some sort of integrated a symbolic Catholic sign, since I think 85% of Slovene are let's say Catholic, so we had to also position this sign, which we kind of incorporated into the horizontally, so it has some symbolic plus also functional element inside the space. So we made a flat roof, hide all the service spaces inside the existing trajectories, plus integrated the way the wall goes from the road to the existing graveyard, plus the square in front of the chapel, that also memorial, when it's warm, it can be held outside, plus some ecological island behind this wall. So you can see the ways of the trajectories, all the concrete shell, and the finished chapel. You can see this connection, the small interior and the lighting during the night. The sides, both entrances from the sides and the hidden ecological island, and you can see from above that object, the chapel, it's integrated into the landscape, so it's in the same level as the existing graveyard, so it doesn't stick out from the race. And still some imagery during construction and the lightning from above, which is traveling all over the day. So it's a, let's say, quite more recent project, which first miracle was that it gathered 4 different Slovene offices to make one project. Okay, the reasons were mostly economical, because they didn't have enough finance to have proper competition. So it's a very interesting task was to do a museum for European space technologies, plus a communal space for a village people in this town, small town, and it's dedicated to, I think it was one of the first rocket scientists from the beginning of the century. He was called Herman Potočnik Nordung was his surname, and he was one of, if not the first scientist who started to dealing with traveling through space and taking consideration the gravity. So he made these space wheel plans, so you can see the spaces and the power of gravity, it's turning the wheel so it can travel through space. So if you don't know this sketch, for sure you know Stanley Kubrick's movie Odyssey, Space Odyssey, which they use his prototype to show it, and not just this one. So the museum which was dedicated to him was built because the mayor was very, let's say, he was very fascinated about my idea, because his mother lives there. So the second option was Maribor, and then they decided, because they were really eager to do it here, and also it was found around more than 60% with the European Union funds. So basically, very simply, we took a prototype and we incorporated it into the space, and plus we wanted to have a feeling and to deal with the gravity a bit when you are entering, and also when are you going, and where are you designing the spaces, which in these cases are, as you can see, the village, are also the communal space, which was the existing house was standing here, so we had to incorporate the communal space, which was positions in the core of the building, and then all around we positioned the exhibition space, more or less. You can imagine, let's say, exhibition going all around, like maybe Guggenheim on the ramp, so just that you feel a bit more gravity when you are traveling from the core to the top of the building, which you have also the sightseeing roof view. And all the way of the ramp there is now exhibitions which are changing, and also the communal space in the middle is also, it's held very different from village Czech players. There are even some weddings and some market happening and so on. So you can see all the exhibition which is starting to help, and in between there is also the fire escape staircase. And on the top, when you can also enter to the offices for curators, there maybe I could just expose, for instance, this suit for astronaut cost more than all the building together. So you can imagine that it's a kind of also really pretty much for all these people, villagers were really, really kind of shocked when they started the people to come, and all the gatherings, also the opening were really interesting to see. I think one of the most interesting openings I ever attended, because it was also projected with the connection with astronaut, Russian astronaut, who was at that time in the space. And just briefly, these are curated offices who kind of, we imagine there's a kind of body transport, you know, like in movies, like they went inside and then they found in a completely other space. So here it's also the exit to the roof, when you can go around and see the beautiful surrounding of the village. And I think this was at the finish of the opening day. Also quite a recent project, which I just changed in the meantime, because it's used also in this category. So we get a lot of strange or less strange calls or mails from different authorities, different people, different, let's say, clients, and that I don't know if you know football well. This Bate club, it's quite well. It's this premium European league. So we got contact from them because they saw this Maribor stadium, and very strange request from them was that they want a replica, a copy of Maribor stadium there. So at that point we had to use some kind of diplomatic language in order that kind of quality club, they really deserve their own original stadium. So basically, then 1 month ago, 1 or 2 months later, so this guy came in Ljubljana, we got a translator, so we made a very fast deal to make an ideal project. And this was the day of the opening. I know that you know this guy, who's called like the last European dictator. So in this matter, it was also very interesting to enter such project. Also location, they changed several times, and finally they chose some former the army barrack area. So which for us was really nice, because it's completely not in the city center, but in the middle of the forest of the pines, which was really nice area. So basically, we also used completely the same diagram of the position of the seats, pretty much the same number of seats also, just that envelope around the stadium. So you can see this area. So all the additional, let's say, program for footballers, some additional fitness plus player zones were placed on the base and the ground floor. And then we make this envelope, and we started to do a lot of, let's say, different tests of this envelope, how a roof becomes a facade, and how we make a perforation according to different functions. So we get to this scheme. You can see these are typical sections from the minimum to the maximum point of the stadium. So you can see all the structure. Also, we made this sort of a lot of economizing the structure, because if not, let's say, before, when we went to make shots with the photographer, we saw and we get to know this Borisov, which this stadium is placed, and it's really, I could say, it's from 70s or 80s in former Yugoslavia. So that's why this stadium now it's really kind of, let's say, communal, or like you would say, iconic. I also don't like this word quite much, but it became also space to meet. Even maybe it's better to show the video. Also perforation, they are open, but they have different function, and they connect also all the spaces and all the visual inside different programs, rooms. plus interior, it's completely exposed, so we didn't hide any structure. Some night view, and maybe it's best to show the video if it will work. So as I said, it was kind of funny to show this video because, as you will see, there are kind of, let's say, funny moments which we experienced when we did this 1 week stay in Borisov. You can see the site, which was completely just pine trees. All around they make all the new infrastructure, the roads, this is all new. And after the match, which was I think the first match in the Borisov. And each day by day this was the match. And the other shots are also during each day, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday and Friday. And Saturday when the people went to visit the nothing was acted, so this is completely coincidence. So you can see this kind of duality of the space. Maybe we didn't even plan it, but this object becomes also not just for, let's say, to function just during the match, which happens, let's say, mostly twice or once a month. But it's also function not that we would project many programs around. So maybe with this as kind of social, let's say, a task, which even we didn't know that it would start, if it would be livable. So you could see the entrances are also from the sign, and one of the halls, it's always used for entrance, if not for the other spaces in between the stadium. Also, we collaborated all the project with the engineering company who was from Lithuania, so we had to deal with a lot of meetings which were held basically sometimes even in between the countries, so it was kind of very, let's say, tense and very, I would say, tense project, which was, I think it lasted for 3 years, and in between it even was put on hold because they had a huge devaluation. So now something completely different. So more than half of the project, maybe 80%, we had to deal with. That's why I'm calling this geometrical context, which more or less we had to deal with fixed urban plans. So it means that all the dimension of the object, more or less like candy's shape, were predefined. So the length and the width and the height. So we, in all these years, we collected a lot of these candies in different heights and the widths, and so more or less housing, and more or less social housing. That's why I will start with the first one, who was our first ever project. It's not 87 but 97, so it was a competition which was done after the urban plan competition done by the architects. So it involved all different typologies, from atrium row houses to and 3-story houses, and I think it gathered around 5 to 6 groups of architects, different groups of architects. The other very speciality was that the first they wanted to do a really expensive neighborhood with mostly for diplomats, and in years and years changed the investor for at least 3 times. So it meant that each new investor, they had to cut the budget. So the last request from the client was that we had to use all the same and the cheapest material on the market, and all the levels should be the same. So all we did secretly is that we made a shift in the first floor, which even on the construction site, from a rough construction of the building, was not seen. So then they were a bit of surprised when they got these shifted elements and balconies on the facade. And this is the very clear organization of space. So living spaces towards the west, the course in the center, and the entrances and the sleeping rooms towards the east. So years ago, 5 years ago, during the study, after we went, I think in 98, during the booming, we just decided to go to London to make a graduation on AA. So after that, mostly what was our first impression was that mostly we lost all the competitions. So before we had luck, and then nothing went okay. So the first which we got was 3 years after we came back. So it was social housing. Also, it is in the Mediterranean area. So low cost, which was held by Slovene Housing Fund. So this was state-established fund which helped young families that they could afford their first apartment. So these are 2 plots redefined. So the first building, it was done by fund, and the second, then they commissioned also to us, but then it's from the community of Isola, and they are renting for the social case families. So here are all the dimensions of the buildings, the fixed, and we never even experienced that we had in the contract that we had to stick to the brutto, the square meters, not just of the selling, but also for brutto. So all the hallways and the service were included into the price. So it was kind of even more difficult to have the budget. So you can see this is the basic principle of horizontal vertical slabs, and we used a minimum amount of halls and the entrance and the staircase, and only thing we incorporated was this element, which is a balcony, which is also standing for the room below, and it also has, let's say, that time we didn't talk so much about sustainable element, because during the summer, especially both when the shades are down, it helps to reduce the heat inside the apartment, because the warm accumulates inside the balconies, and then the east and the west winds blows through these perforated sides out. And in the same goes during the winter, just with that change that it helps to heat the interior, because also the winters and the coast, they can be pretty much hard. So you can see this bare construction of the building, and you can see the first element, which was kind of, let's say, the prototype. And then we also chose the colors, which was kind of, let's say, Mediterranean, not to mention that the people, they really like to make the colorful and they really like, especially Slovene, to decorate their balconies with all kinds of crap. So we wanted to have them a bit already from a start, and also the colors of the interiors were different. And this surprising, and if you can see the vertical shift, it kind of diminished the scale of the building, which you will also see maybe in some other projects, because as you can see, the one apartment, it's held, for instance, here, so it has a room and a balcony and another room, so it's kind of diminished even where the floors, the feeling of the floor. So we also took consideration the 1.5 meter balconies out from the facade, and some shots from the apartments before the inhabitants came in. So after this competition, we got invitation from a private, fast-growing construction company who also held a competition, and later they sold it to Slovene Housing Fund. Also here the urban plan was fixed. It's very near the city center, and there are more or less 140 meters long slabs with 4 floors high. So basically their only request, so this was an existing slaughtery area. So the only request was how we fulfill the slabs, all the volumetrical, the volumes with the program. So we delivered the competition just on one A3 paper. So we took a lot of consideration to make a mathematical, let's say, plus minus. So all the program which they wanted, we incorporated into one model, which is around 30 meters, which is also area where the fire shafts, they had to be because of the fire law. So each floor is also the same, so it kind of make faster building process. So because all the projects plus realization, they had to be finished in 2 years. So practically it meant one apartment a day, because 650 apartments are inside these volumes, plus that with 1.5 meters in the first floor, we gained another 50,000 square meters to investors to sell, and also the construction and also the drawings and the for permissions were quite kind of faster, because everything is done with models. So in comparing to this, we wanted to have completely, let's say, diminished all the rigid bare, let's say, slabs, horizontal and plus vertical. So we kind of layered all the facade into the plaster zone, which are the basic, the living and all the interior spaces. Then we introduced these lodges in 1.5 meter area, plus in combination with open balconies. So we get then the fence layer of the facade. So more or less also here we even got to 650 square meters, euros per square meter, because the same was then sold to Slovene Housing Fund. And what is special here, that we made some sort of very, I would say, diverse habitants. So because I didn't mention that the top floors we use it for duplex spaces. So Basically, they had this lottery which you can apply, and then the most social cases, they get apartments, and then they are leftovers of bigger apartments plus more or less all the duplex apartments. So they were sold also on the open market, and it's kind of diverse space now because we have all the, let's say, diverse also social interaction between them, because one of the apartments is also owned by former our Prime Minister. So it's kind of, I would say, unique social interaction in this. I also mentioned that maybe all the landscape was completely organic, so it doesn't have any square, let's say, right square. So one of the top apartments, and I will continue with the 3 years ago, I think the first project we did abroad, and luckily it was kind of very, let's say, extensional, and by luck, I would say now more or less that we won invited competition in Paris for student apartments, I think around 182. So I don't know how you are familiar with Paris, but more or less I think you know the Parc La Villette. Also in vicinity now there was Philharmonic by Jean Nouvel, which I think this is not author anymore, and I'm not sure. So basically I will go and return to this scheme of all the exercises we did for 10 years. So basically we got to the same exercise. So we had, in this case, 2 volumetrical, maybe very special comparing to some others, just 14 meters length and around 125 width and 125. So both 2 blocks had to be for student studios, single studios. So basically we made the course with basic communication and the communal area for the students who share one garden and one garden at the back, and with 2 completely different faces toward the street, which also diminished, and we combine the balconies, we combine 4, 6 and 8 together in order that we scale down the 2-floor high building, which is almost a high rise. And on the other walkway to the other side, overlooking the center of the Paris, you can see the Eiffel Tower from here. It's the let's say semi-public, and all the entrance to each room. So it's open, and the net cover of the elevation from the side. And I didn't mention before, yeah, you can see this distribution of the elevation, so completely 2 different faces towards the street and towards the center, and down of it's also held garage parking for the trams. So you can see, you can feel here the height of the building, which is really extensive. Maybe this is interesting to see. So you can see this also 7-meter difference height between 2 faces, and the boxes, balconies towards the street, which you can see in realization phase, and also just came all the building inside the inner Paris city circle. So the setup of the thermal bridge cut balconies and all construction skeleton, and you can see here the difference of 7 meters, the communal area, the entrance, the boxes made of HPL, raw placed panels, and on the other side the closed mesh elevation with all entrances and the walkway to the rooms. It's very interesting that they wanted that we close completely all the halls because they were afraid that the students will throw bottles on the fields. So the communal space with the garden and one typical room and the walkway and all the entrances. I have also video, maybe it would be more interesting to see it. So this is the view from the open walkway balconies towards the center. So this was first test drive of the tram, which goes completely along the building. Very diverse area of the Paris, which was also developed parallelly with the building. Next to it, it's also finished building, even a hallway by Fichtinger architects, and these are both football fields. On the other side, which is lifted for 7 meters underneath, there are trams, parkings. So these are two exposed communication shafts with elevators and staircases. This all was developed just about, I think it was a lot for us also because I think that the tempo of the construction was dictated by the tram opening. So I'm sure that in other case it would, all construction would take much longer than in this case. This is the middle space and the connection in between, in the first floor, between both buildings. Fencing, and this is the, I think, the backyard, which we also designed. And the main entrance to the building. So basically all the staircases, and this is open area. So all the protection quite well also from the weather conditions is just the net, and basically it holds much of the water and this is this back Jardin, which is going along, and it continues with the bridge, which is crossing the river. So I want to talk now about, let's say, projection, and the next part which I will show, which is dealing with the vernacular and, let's say, traditional, or let's say more or less about the preservation of the building, or let's say of the concept, which maybe architects, sometimes we have to be progressive, but sometimes we can, I would not like to use the word conservative, but in order to get, especially because of the economical changes during the decade, that we have this kind of social responsibility and so on. So what we spotted, especially in our own country, is that more or less I would say anonymous architecture, which is basically not so much in the cities, but I would say outskirts and especially on the countryside. So I would say that we layering the different projects which I will show in this package dealing with mostly, in this case, about Alpine vernacular. I will just show some cases, for instance, this high-rise building, which I will explain further, or that kind of infrastructural wooden buildings are, as you can see here, slowly collapsing. Nobody is taking care, more or less. They are also around the especially higher Alpine areas, really interesting architecture, and completely unpreserved and not protected at all. So, first project I will show was also social. I would say let's say we took a peek at the lowest point, which also the apartments was sold for 860 euros per square meters, were pretty much on Alpine part, very close to the Ljubljana airport. So basically we had also urban plan, and more or less we took especially the outcast of the building, and we used all the elements. Maybe I went too fast. So I wanted to show you these so-called high-rise buildings. So more or less these are 200 years old infrastructural wooden buildings which hold spaces under for those again and to store the building the first, and to store the, let's say, the crops and all the hay on the, let's say, attic, and then you can also dry the hay on the both sides. So really interesting, not just let's say architecturally, but also in function. So we used in this case a kind of first level of entering of the balconies, and let's say basic external elevation as kind of first shading zone. So next, which we did, it's, maybe you can see here, we hide all the elements like chimneys is in this pitched element, which is flat in the middle. So maybe you can see, you will see in the next project. So you don't see any exposed ventilation and any shafts. So this is the balcony, and okay, I will show this in the next project, which is 8 small ski apartments, and also beautiful environment in next to border to Italy, called Kranjska Gora. If you know, they're world champion, ski championship, World Cup held every year. So it also, the village lives also during the winter and also the summer. So this was a very small spot. And what was the main, let's say, special position of the building? That they had the best views on the corners. So we started with cutting the cube, which we had prescribed, we had in urban plan. So we cut it in all the vertical for establishing the roof, and also in the horizontal and also vertical cuts. And where we did the cuts, we positioned the balconies plus all the glazing for the interior spaces. So you can see already a result, the cutted diagonal balconies and the glazing, and the typically, let's say, the stone and the solid base on the ground floor, and the more or less they're used concrete slates as also used for roof elements, which we take now to the on the facade. So that in this case we just use two materials, wood and these slates. So we did the finish all just till the first constructions also. It means that it was just bare walls without even as you can see, without the finished paving the floors. So very small project, which if you're going from Bled, there is also, I want to make a little trip on the Alpine area. It's called Bohin. So it has a really beautiful lake, and it's kind of corner, which is just continuing with the mountains, which is, you can also reach the highest tree glove from here. So this is very small village next to the lake, and I will, so this is the project which client already bought together with the building permission. So more or less this was the elevation, so the client asked for some sort of let's say redesigning. So what we did is the frame which is going around and continuous stroke from the roof to the pillars which holds water and is collected underneath, and also the space in between is used as a veranda. So this is already designed, use the same elements and the same materials. The wood, the larch and the stone as a solid base. And the one glazed towards the south, which is really good collector, especially during the winter, so it really helps to heat the inner space, to reduce the heat in interior. And the top floor, it's together around under 120 square meters. So maybe I will not show the video, maybe if somebody will have opportunity to see it after. So the last project, I will just briefly go forward. It's just with one basic concept that we don't do nothing from the outside. So it means that we have to make some sort of example which would encourage the owners of that buildings which are now slowly collapsing, that they can live also in other function. So basically you can see that we kept all the exterior and all the internal construction. So all we did, it was inner shell out of out of spruce. This is the wood which was used for all the elements of the interior. So for the walls, floors, and all the furniture inside. So you can see existing and the new, which was also all that we did is opening the interior towards the inside. But basically all the slates, also the existing, were reused, and all the wooden cladding was just left like it was. So you can see existing and the new porch and some, let's say, pre and after intervention. And I will just finish that we also continued with these topics on fall term, yeah. And just last week was printed the book about the studio we had with GSD, Harvard students, and also because I also don't like to travel, we made a study trip to Slovenia, of course. So because we basically, the topic was housing, or especially habitation in extreme environments, also that counts inside the Slovene Alpine part. That's why students came here, And we, like I showed you, we elaborated all the architecture, all the conditions on the Alpine area. So the first, I will just show briefly the first part of the course was to make a shelter for 9 people. And with, let's say, some sort of concept that maybe one of the student work we will also put to realization, which I am happy and glad to say that now it's really under construction, and it's just in August they with helicopter will be put on the site, because there is no way how to otherwise go to the site, because the site is around 2,200 meters. So just some brief student works of different concepts of living in the shelter or to spend the night. And the last one, which I will show, it was put, and it will be put on the site this summer. So it's the 1 month old photos. So thank you very much. I'm finished. And if there are any questions, I will be really glad. I hope I was not too long. So. No?
Just a second, we are reading. Okay, so maybe we can show. Yes?
I would like to know, how would you work here in Pristina? Do you have any idea, what would you start with? Give us a clue, or give the students a clue. What would you do here?
Maybe I was thinking about this when we drove together with the car to pass from the airport to the city center. So what we all both noticed was kind of feeling of unfinishedness, which in this case maybe we could take this in an advantage, you know, especially for instance comparing, for instance, with Vienna. You know, you go there and you don't have any feeling or even wish that you could add something or you could take on something. Everything is already there and it's really perfect, maybe too much perfect. So in this case I would take this as an advantage, but maybe what I would suggest is maybe that I would pass this to the students. I would not interfere too much, but like we did, or I could say that we had more, in my country we had more luck than maybe brains, and nothing, I think it would, even if it would not plant, not even a chance that a state or a country would do something that, let's say, architecture would be point of interest of the state. So in this case, I think the students you will be, or the colleagues or the professors, you will be the one who, I think you will have to make example. I think the small steps can do something which would maybe call a virus, like we did maybe with this barn in Alpine area, that we would not make restrictions like they do institutions. They do also the heritage. They all the time they do restriction. We had to encourage them so that they would do something. So in this case, like we all know, we talked yesterday that more or less we know like 98% of architecture all over the world, it's more or less generic the same. And the small points, maybe they're points of, let's say, of change. So in this case, maybe you have much more chances than even us 20 years later. So I think it's on you that you will have to maybe learn also what you see this week, also from yesterday to, I think we have even more than 1 week. And I also, before Hrvoje, it was one project, the guy who made really some small project, some kind of small iteration. I think maybe these are the steps which they can push forward the situation here in Kosovo. So, yeah.
Somebody else, another question? I guess we don't have questions. So
I'm ready.
I'd like to thank you for